You think catching your spouse cheating would be the worst part. It wasn't. It was the way he smiled, like I'd just handed him a gift. I thought I was ending a betrayal. He thought he'd won the lottery. The first time I saw the message, I wanted to believe it was spam. Just some cruel, mistaken DM from a stranger. But no. There it was, clear as day, a picture of my husband, my Jason, kissing another woman outside a downtown wine bar. She looked young, maybe mid-20s, in a sunflower dress that clung to her like summer warmth. I stared at the photo, my hand frozen on my coffee cup. My breath stilled. The sender was anonymous, the caption brief, "You deserve to know." That night, while he was in the shower, I scrolled through his phone. Password? Still our anniversary. He hadn't even tried to hide it. Texts. Photos. Reservations. A fake work trip to Asheville that was really a long weekend with her. I didn't confront him right away. I waited. I wanted him to lie to my face first. That next morning over breakfast, I asked how Asheville had been. Stressful, he said, chewing toast, not even looking at me. The supplier's a mess. I nodded slowly and placed the manila folder on the table. What's this? He asked, frowning. Divorce papers, I said quietly. He stared, the color draining from his face for just a heartbeat. But then, and I swear to God, he smiled. Not sheepishly. Not nervously. A full-on, relieved smile. Wow, he whispered. You actually did it. My stomach turned. You're not going to fight it? He shrugged, that stupid grin still on his face. No. You can have the car. I'll sign everything. He grabbed his keys, kissed me on the forehead like I was his little sister, and walked out of the house we shared for 6 years, like he'd just finished a to-do list. I stood there, stunned. For days I thought the pain would drown me. Until the truth came out, not from him, but from his cousin, drunk at a family barbecue. He had to be divorced to get the inheritance, she slurred. Something about his dad's will. Stupid clause, right? And just like that, everything clicked. Jason didn't cheat because he fell in love. He didn't fall into an affair. He crafted it. Planned it. Staged it. And I'd walked right into the script. Her name was Tessa. I found her 2 weeks after the divorce was finalized. Not by accident, I had to hire someone. A private investigator. It wasn't cheap, but neither was having my entire life used as a stepping stone for someone else's inheritance. She lived in a small rented unit above a florist in a quiet part of town, the kind of neighborhood where people leave hand-painted signs asking drivers to slow down for kids and cats. When she opened the door, she looked even younger than in the photo. Her hair was damp from a shower, her eyes tired. She blinked when she saw me. I'm not here to fight, I said quickly. I'm his ex-wife. I think you and I have both been lied to. She didn't slam the door. That surprised me. Instead, she stepped back and nodded for me to come in. Her apartment smelled like lavender and warm toast. The walls were bare, except for one tiny corkboard where she'd pinned appointment reminders and grocery lists. Jason told me you were separated, she said after a long silence. That you cheated first. That he was just trying to survive. My laugh came out bitter and raw. He told me you were a one-night mistake. Tessa flinched. I'm sorry, I added, softer now. I don't believe that anymore. I think he planned everything. You. Me. All of it. She looked down, picking at her sleeve. I thought he loved me. Then she stood up, crossed the room, and pulled a folded piece of paper out of her purse. It wasn't a paper. It was a photo. Grainy. Blurry. Black and white. An ultrasound. My breath caught. Is that? I'm 14 weeks, she said. He left when I told him. A strange numbness spread through my chest. I wasn't sure if it was rage or heartbreak or both. But I knew one thing, we weren't alone in this anymore. I showed her the clause in the will, the one I'd dug up through legal contacts, the one that made it clear Jason's father, a bitter, old money tyrant, had written a stipulation: no funds shall be dispersed to married beneficiaries. Only those who are free of conjugal obligations shall qualify for the estate. Jason had over $3 million to gain. He needed a reason to divorce. A reason that wouldn't make him look like the bad guy. So he built a betrayal. I was his insurance policy, I muttered. And you were the excuse. Tessa started crying then, not loudly, but with a quiet devastation that broke something in me. I sat beside her. I didn't know her. But I knew her pain. He had taken everything from both of us. And for the first time, I saw it clearly, we weren't two women on opposite sides. We were allies. We didn't go to the police. We went to the press. Tessa wasn't sure at first. She was still holding onto some thin shred of privacy, dignity, safety. But once I showed her the pattern, the text messages, the timeline of his fake affair, the inheritance clause, the shell companies he was using to funnel the early payouts, she understood. He wasn't going to stop. He was going to do this again. Maybe not with her. Maybe not even for money. But Jason thrived on manipulation, and he always made sure someone else took the fall. So we decided to ruin his favorite illusion, control. It started small, a carefully worded anonymous post on a popular relationships forum. We wrote it together. I typed, she paced. The headline read, "My ex-husband faked an affair to trick me into divorcing him, so he could claim a $3 million inheritance. Now the woman he used is pregnant and alone. Ask me anything." It hit the front page in less than 4 hours. By the end of the day, it was trending on Twitter. By the next morning, I had 6 voicemails from media outlets and a direct message from a producer at the Today Show. Tessa was overwhelmed, so I did most of the talking. I never used his full name. I didn't need to. People are clever. His LinkedIn was soon flooded with comments. A few industry watchdog accounts picked it up and started investigating his company's ethics. The dominoes began to fall. Jason texted me 2 days in, just one line. "This is slander. Take it down." I didn't reply. Instead, I posted screenshots of the message with the caption, "Gaslighting 101, when they lie, get caught, and still think they can scare you into silence." That post got 50,000 likes in a day. But the real explosion happened when Tessa agreed to do a podcast interview. She didn't want to be anonymous anymore. She wanted people to know her name. Her voice cracked when she talked about the ultrasound. About him ghosting her. About how she'd thought she'd met a man who would change her life, and instead ended up crying alone in a clinic hallway. People rallied around her. Donations came pouring in. Someone sent her a baby stroller. A lawyer offered pro bono work. A journalist started a thread uncovering Jason's business ties, and that's when we found the construction connection. A company he was quietly backing. One that had been hit with safety violations. One that had cut corners and ignored regulations. And one that had recently left a man paralyzed after a scaffolding collapse. I felt a chill as I read the article. We weren't done yet. Jason thought he played the long game. He had no idea we were just getting started. It happened on a Tuesday. One of those gray, unremarkable afternoons when the city felt too quiet and too loud at once. I was stopping by the corner store after work, mostly to grab cereal and milk. My brain was still spinning from an interview I'd given that morning, a podcast that now had over 400,000 downloads in 3 days. The host had called Tessa and me the bravest women on the internet. I wasn't sure how I felt about that. As I stepped into the store, I heard it, a muffled shout from the cashier, the sound of running feet, then silence. A man ran past me, breathless. Two small boys, maybe 8 or 9, bolted from the snack aisle, each holding a pack of granola bars. They made it to the door before the clerk grabbed one by the arm. "Let go of him," I said before I even knew I was going to. The kid was skinny. Dirty. Terrified. "I wasn't gonna call the cops," the cashier muttered, glancing at me. "But this is the 3rd time. They keep stealing food." I turned to the boys. "Where's your mom?" The smaller one, still clutching the bars like they were gold, looked up and whispered, "She died." It was the older one who told me the rest, after I got them something warm to eat from the cafe across the street. Their names were Nico and Elias. 9-year-old twins. Their father had been injured in a construction accident 6 months ago. Couldn't work. They were behind on rent. No heat. No food. No one helping. I called Tessa. "I know this is wild," I said, "but can you meet me? There's something about this, I think it's all connected." She showed up in 20 minutes, visibly pregnant and wrapped in a too-thin jacket. When she heard the story, her face changed. She pulled up an article on her phone. Same construction site. Same company. And Jason was still listed as a silent partner. We spent the next 2 weeks helping the boys and their dad, Marcos. He was proud, too proud at first, but when I offered to connect him with a lawyer and a reporter I knew, he nodded slowly. "I don't want money," he said. "I just want someone to pay for what they did." The article dropped on a Friday. Negligence, fraud, and abandonment, the untold cost of corporate greed. It named names. Jason's. His father's. The company they used to funnel the inheritance through. Tessa's story was included too. So was a photo of me helping Marcos and the twins. The story went viral again, but this time, it wasn't about cheating. It was about the human cost. The lives destroyed. The silence broken. And Jason? He started panicking. First came the emails. Then the cease and desist letters. Then, finally, a desperate voice message. "You don't know what you're doing. You're ruining everything." But he was wrong. We knew exactly what we were doing. It wasn't revenge anymore. Not really. Something had shifted. It happened the day I walked into the hospital room and saw her lying there, pale and small beneath too many wires. Jason's mother. Linda. She used to be sharp as glass, the kind of woman who could cut you down with a single look and make you apologize for bleeding. She hated me. Always had. Called me cold, barren, not good enough for her son. Tessa never even met her. Jason kept that part of his life separate, like he knew she'd never approve of his plan. But when the scandal hit, and Jason's name started trending for all the wrong reasons, Linda disappeared from the media entirely. Then I heard through a friend, she'd been hospitalized. Liver failure. Complications from untreated diabetes. Alone. No visitors. No one answering her calls. I didn't go out of kindness. I went because I needed to see the woman who raised a man like Jason. I expected another performance, another snide remark even on her deathbed. But when I walked in, she started crying. "I didn't know," she whispered, voice hoarse. "I didn't know what he did to you. What he did to her." She motioned to the photo on the table, Tessa, holding her round belly, standing next to the twins and me. It was from the article. Someone must have left it on her nightstand. "I was proud of him," she continued. "Thought he was clever. Ruthless, maybe, but that's what it takes, right? To survive in this world." And now. Her breath caught. She looked older than I remembered. Fragile. Broken. I thought if I raised him strong, he'd never end up weak like his father, she said. But I made him cruel. We sat in silence for a while. That's when I told her about Tessa. About the baby. About how she had no support. No job. No family. Just a tiny apartment and a box of second-hand baby clothes from strangers online. Linda listened. Then asked for a pen. 2 days later, her lawyer called us both in. She was signing over her apartment to Tessa. No strings. No conditions. Just one quiet line from her cracked lips. It's the only part of this family that deserves a real home. Tessa cried. I didn't. I'd used up all my tears. But my chest ached with something sharp and hot and unexpected, gratitude. Linda passed away that same month. Jason never visited. I wondered if he even knew. But karma did. Because within weeks, the construction company's audit was complete. Investigators traced missing funds, falsified safety reports, and even a few bribes tied to city inspectors. Jason's name came up. Again and again and again. He couldn't explain it away this time. He wasn't just a lying husband anymore. He was a criminal. And Judgment Day was coming. The courtroom smelled like old wood and fresh ink. Jason looked smaller than I remembered. His hair was thinner, suit cheaper, eyes hollowed out by sleepless nights and desperation. He wouldn't meet my gaze. Not mine. Not Tessa's. He was no longer the man who smiled when I served him divorce papers. That version of him, smug, untouchable, manipulative, had withered into someone pathetic. And yet, when the judge entered, I saw it. That flicker of hope in his eyes. He still believed he could talk his way out. Spin it. Control the room. He didn't realize that the room belonged to us now. The prosecutor opened with the financial fraud charges. Shell companies. Tax evasion. Bribes to contractors. All meticulously documented by whistleblowers and internal records. Then came the personal testimonies, and that's where the air changed. Marcos took the stand first. Told the story of the fall. The ignored safety warnings. The lies he was fed. The 6 months he spent learning how to move his legs again while his boys stole food to survive. He didn't cry. He didn't have to. His story was enough. Then Tessa. God, she was brave. She walked to the stand with a hand on her belly and her chin high. She told the court how Jason lured her in, promised her a future, and vanished the moment she became inconvenient. She read texts. Shared emails. Exposed every lie. And finally, me. I thought I'd be nervous. But I wasn't. I told the truth. That I was manipulated. That the affair was staged. That the divorce was orchestrated for money. That I'd married a man who didn't just betray me, he used me as a stepping stone to wealth. I spoke clearly. Calmly. Without rage. Because I didn't need to be angry anymore. The truth was louder than my fury. Jason's lawyer tried to paint it all as a misunderstanding. Overreaching ambition, he said. A few bad decisions made under pressure. But no one bought it. The paper trail alone would have buried him. The judge deliberated for only a day. Jason was found guilty on multiple counts: fraud, tax evasion, reckless endangerment, and obstruction of justice. His sentencing hearing was set, but the damage was already done. His assets? Frozen. Inheritance? Forfeited. Reputation? Destroyed. Even his mother's death couldn't save him. She'd rewritten her will before she passed. Not a single dollar for Jason. Not a word. Just a quiet transfer of her apartment deed to Tessa, and a small donation to a construction safety nonprofit. And then came the part that hit hardest. When the judge asked if any victims wanted to make final statements, Tessa stood again. "I forgive you," she said, voice trembling. "Not because you deserve it. But because I won't let you live in my head anymore." Jason flinched. But he didn't speak. He was finally silent. There was no celebration when the verdict came down. No champagne. No victory speeches. Just a quiet exhale, the kind that comes after you've been holding your breath for years. Jason was gone. Not dead. Not vanished. Just irrelevant. A headline fading from the front page, a story people whispered about in office kitchens, then forgot once the next scandal came along. But the people he hurt? We were still here. Tessa moved into Linda's apartment in early spring. It was small, outdated, and smelled faintly of old books and rose soap, but it was hers. She painted the baby's room pale yellow. I helped with the crib. Marcos installed shelves. The twins picked out stuffed animals and glow-in-the-dark stars for the ceiling. We didn't talk about Jason. Not anymore. Instead, we talked about what's next. It was Marcos who brought up the idea one night over cheap pizza and baby name debates. He'd been rehabbing slowly, taking freelance work when he could. Fixing fences, repairing porches, patching roofs. Word was spreading that he was good, better than most licensed contractors. "I've got skills," he said, shrugging. "But no license. No capital. No business degree." "I've got a law degree," I offered. "And a serious grudge against shady contractors." "And I've got design ideas," Tessa added shyly. "Color palettes, staging plans. Stuff like that." We stared at each other for a second. And then laughed. But the idea stuck. We met the next week at a coffee shop, armed with notebooks, laptops, and borrowed optimism. Tessa sketched a logo. I called in favors from old clients who owed me. Marcos pitched project ideas with a passion that made you forget he was still learning to walk without a cane. We called it Redemption Renovations. Our slogan? Building better, not just homes, but lives. Cheesy. But it felt right. We started with simple jobs, kitchen updates, backyard decks, baby-proofing. Tessa handled design consultations. Marcos led small teams. I managed the legal, financial, and logistical mess behind the scenes. Every client came through word of mouth. No flashy ads. Just stories. The single mom who needed a safe nursery. The retired couple whose porch was sinking into the earth. The man recovering from back surgery who just wanted a bathtub he could step into without pain. We showed up. We listened. We rebuilt. Sometimes I'd look around, at Tessa measuring curtains, at Marcos laughing with the twins, at the little community forming around us, and I'd feel it deep in my bones. This wasn't a rebound. This was a beginning. It was a Sunday. Late summer. The kind of afternoon where the sun doesn't scorch, it just warms. Cicadas sang in the distance. Something was baking inside, banana bread, I think. Or maybe cinnamon rolls. I can't remember exactly. What I do remember is this. The porch was full. Tessa was sitting in the wicker chair, swollen belly finally gone, her newborn son wrapped in a blue and white blanket against her chest. Marco sat beside her, holding a bottle with one hand and balancing Elias on his knee with the other. Nico was on the floor beside them, drawing something that involved a lot of stick figures and capes. Probably superheroes. The baby's name was Eli. Not after anyone. Not symbolic. Just simple, soft, his mother's choice. I was leaning against the railing with a lemonade in my hand, watching the sun dip behind the trees. Tessa's new partner, a quiet, gentle soul named Jonah who worked with special needs kids, had just come back from inside with more drinks. He gave Tessa a kiss on the forehead without even thinking about it, like it was second nature. Marcos caught my eye and grinned. "Did you ever think life would end up here?" I shook my head. Nope. Not in a million years. It wasn't just us. We had company. My best friend Riley had driven in from out of town. Tessa's aunt from Nebraska brought homemade jam and stories that made the twins giggle until they snorted. Even Judge Chen stopped by, in jeans, no robe, with a handmade quilt for the baby and a look in her eyes that was nothing short of maternal pride. We were a strange family. Unmatched. Untraditional. Unapologetic. 3 grandmothers had somehow formed around Eli, Judge Chen, Riley's mother, who insisted on being called Grandma C, and even Marcos's late wife's mother, who chose to love the boy not because of blood, but because of heart. There were no last names that matched. No photo albums that connected us by birth. But this? This was family. When the sky turned orange and soft music drifted through the open windows, I looked around that porch and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. The kind that doesn't come from winning. The kind that comes from healing. Eli stirred in Tessa's arms, his little fist stretching toward the sky. She smiled at him like he was the only person in the world, then looked up at me. "We're going to be okay," she said. I nodded. "We already are. And maybe that's the real ending. Not Jason's downfall. Not the verdict. Not the inheritance. But this porch. This family. This moment. Because sometimes, redemption doesn't come in the courtroom or on the front page. Sometimes it's found in the laughter of kids on a summer night, in the warmth of banana bread, in the quiet, radical act of choosing each other. We weren't survivors anymore. We were builders. Of homes. Of second chances. Of love. It arrived 2 months after the porch gathering, postmarked from the county jail. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting instantly. Neat. Slanted. Overconfident, even on paper. Jason. I almost tossed it in the trash without opening it. But curiosity, that awful, persistent instinct, won. Inside was a single page. No apology. No excuses. Just a strange blend of ego and regret. Like he wasn't sure which one he was supposed to feel. I've been thinking. About the life I wanted. About the men I admired, the kind who always won, no matter who got hurt. I thought that's what power was. Getting what you want before anyone else realizes they've been used. You didn't beat me. You didn't expose me. I did that to myself. But I do wonder, if I hadn't smiled when you handed me those papers, would you still have burned it all down? Anyway. I heard the baby was born. I won't pretend I deserve to know his name. Just, tell him one day that he came from chaos, but was claimed by kindness. That's more than I ever gave anyone. There was no signature. Just a final, messy ink line that trailed off the page like he couldn't bear to finish the sentence. I folded the letter once, then again, and slipped it into a drawer I rarely opened. Not because I needed it. But because I wanted to remember that power doesn't come from hurting people. It comes from choosing not to become the people who did. That week, Redemption Renovations took on a new project, an old community center that had nearly collapsed from neglect. The city was reluctant to fund the repairs, but we promised to handle the labor at cost. Tessa organized the design. Marcos brought in extra volunteers. I handled the contracts. It would become a free after-school hub, a place for kids like Nico and Elias to learn, eat, play. One evening, I brought the boys to the site. They ran through the dusty halls with flashlights, their laughter bouncing off the crumbling walls. "This is gonna be awesome," Elias shouted. Nico nodded solemnly. "Like a secret lair. But real." I stood beside Tessa at the doorway, watching them explore. "It's funny," I said, "how broken things can still become something good." She looked at me, belly soft under her shirt now, healing in ways I knew went far deeper than skin. "They always could," she said. "They just needed the right hands." There's a photograph I keep on my desk now. It's not framed in gold or tucked into a leather album. Just a printout, slightly curled at the edges, pinned beside my calendar. In it, we're all standing on the porch, the same one from that late summer night. Tessa's holding Eli, who's laughing like he already knows the world is safe in her arms. Marcos has one arm slung around both twins, grinning like a man who never expected this version of happiness. Jonah is mid-laugh. Riley's holding a glass of wine. And I'm just smiling. Not the polite, guarded smile I used to wear at charity galas and client meetings. A real one. That photo reminds me every day that life is built, not inherited, not gifted, not granted. Built. From mess. From pain. From rock bottom and second chances. Redemption Renovations has grown in ways I never expected. We've expanded to 2 more cities. Partnered with nonprofits. Offered apprenticeships to young men and women who aged out of foster care, who needed not just a job, but someone to believe in them. Tessa runs the design side now full-time. Marcos trains new hires. And I've started mentoring young women navigating careers and chaos, the same way I once had to, but alone. Sometimes people ask me why I didn't sue Jason. Why I let him fade into silence instead of chasing a final piece of justice. The truth? He already lost the one thing he worshipped most, control. And I gained something better. Peace. Community. A family I chose, and who chose me back without hesitation or condition. At Eli's first birthday, we threw a picnic in the same park where I once broke down the day the story first went viral. There were balloons. Cupcakes. Marcos grilled hot dogs while Nico and Elias played tag with new friends. Tessa set up a little sign that said Eli's crew, and under it, a collage of photos. Linda's apartment. Our first renovation. A before and after of the community center. The porch. I stood there for a long time, just taking it in. Jonah came up behind me, slid his hand into mine. "You did this," he said quietly. "No," I replied. "We did this. Because in the end, this wasn't a story about betrayal. Not really. It was a story about what happens when women refuse to stay broken. When strangers become sisters. When forgiveness is offered not to the one who hurt you, but to yourself, forever thinking you weren't enough. We didn't burn everything down for revenge. We planted something better. And what bloomed was ours."